Hey everybody. So, today is our first day of reading the Odyssey, and I've decided to try this for a couple days, see if it works, and if it does, we'll continue, and if not, we'll figure something else out. You can also hear my cat talking to you in the background. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to read this out loud, and using this highlight tool, I'm going to mark things as I go. I encourage you to either read on the screen with me, to read your own copy or PDF copy, or if you picked up paper package, your paper copy. And then here are your two options for answering questions. So you can see here that I've marked in the text all the questions that I want you to answer. So there are usually 4 or 5, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less questions per day. So like for today, we're going to read 1 to really 4 pages, because the second page is a character list. But sometimes you'll have more pages than that, and you still should only have about 5 questions. I think there's 1 or 2 days where there are maybe 6 or 7 questions. So that's option 1. You answer those. There's a document on Classroom that's blank with spaces for you to fill in the answers, and you turn that in. The second option is, instead of filling those out, you join me for a live class discussion that will take place after this. So I'll try to get these posted a day in advance. The first one will be tomorrow, Tuesday the 21st. If you join me for that, and if you participate, and I'll give you more details on what participation looks like in the discussion itself. You don't have to do these questions, okay? Because that conversation would take the place of a class. These are supposed to be like our class conversations, okay? This question is like a class conversation. If you're in the chat, and it'll be a Google Meet, then you won't have to do this because you've participated in the class conversation, okay? Okay, well, let's get started. This is part 1, The Adventures of Odysseus. Our textbook only has certain selections, and we're going to read all of them, but I'm going to read it with you. So, in the opening verses, because it's an epic poem, so it has verses as opposed to paragraphs, Homer addresses the muse of epic poetry. He asks her to help in telling the tale of Odysseus. If you look over here, it explains that the muse is any one of the 9 goddesses of the arts, literature, and sciences, the spirit that is thought to inspire a poet or other artist. So you may have heard the term muse before, like, oh, speak to me, muse, help me do blank, and it's usually an art form. He is talking to a muse saying, hey muse, help me tell this story. So let's begin. Sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story of that man skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer, harried for years on end after he plundered the stronghold of the proud height of Troy. So here, just as a reminder, when a word is underlined, that means it's a vocabulary word. And if you look over here, plundered means took goods by force or looted. So after he looted the stronghold of the proud height of Troy, this is called a footnote. You can look over here to see where that is. Troy is a city in northwest Asia Minor, site of the Trojan War. So this is Homer talking, not Odysseus, right? He's saying, muse, help me tell the story of Odysseus, who looted Troy for years on end. Okay, let's start here. He saw the town lands and learned the minds of many distant men, and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. But not by will nor valor could he save them, for their own recklessness destroyed them all. Their own recklessness destroyed them all. Okay? Keep that in mind. So, but not by will or valor could he save them. He wants to protect his people. He wants to protect the men with him, but their own recklessness destroyed them. Children and fools, they killed and feasted on the cattle of Lord Helios, the sun. Helios was a sun god. And he who moves all day through heaven took from their eyes the dawn of their return. Of these adventures, Muse, daughter of Zeus, here's our reference to Zeus, who is the king of the gods, tell us in our time, lift the great song again. So part of this, let me just mark here a little bit. So this is telling about him in Troy. This is telling about his trip home. Okay, so this is the Odyssey. Okay, So Homer is saying, great muse, help me tell the story of this man. He really, while he was away, he fought only to save his life and to bring his shipmates home. So his goal is to bring home his shipmates and to bring home himself, okay? So let's look at some characters. Alcinous is the king of the Phaeacians to whom Odysseus tells his story, okay? So as Odysseus is telling his story, this is who he's talking to, and they are kind of an important people later. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca. Calypso is a goddess who loved Odysseus. You're going to see this as a pretty common theme. Circe is an enchantress who helped Odysseus. Again, there's going to be some love there. Zeus is the king of the gods. Apollo is the god of music, poetry, prophecy, and medicine. Agamemnon is the king and leader of Greek forces. He's the guy who was leading the battle against the Trojans. Poseidon is the god of the sea, earthquakes, horses, and storms at sea. He is Odysseus's divine antagonist. Athena is the goddess of wisdom, skills, and warfare. She's kind of like Odysseus's buddy, only he doesn't really know it. She helps him out. Polyphemus is the Cyclops who imprisoned Odysseus. He kind of sets the journey going. Laertes is Odysseus's father. Cronus is the Titan ruler of the universe and father of Zeus. Now, if you've taken mythology, you'll know who Cronus is. Let's just say he's not a great guy. He ate a bunch of his babies. Moving on. Perimedes is a member of Odysseus' crew, as is Eurylochus. I'm really bad at these names. Tiresias is a blind prophet who advises Odysseus. And Tiresias shows up in a lot of Greek myth and a lot of Greek tales. Persephone, the wife of Hades. If you've never read the myth of Persephone and Hades, you need to. If you're in my mythology class, you should have. Telemachus is Odysseus' son. The sirens are creatures whose songs lure sailors to their deaths. Not super great. So here's a monster. Scylla is a sea monster of gray rock. She has 6 heads. She's pretty cool. We're going to see her later. Charybdis, another monster, is an enormous whirlpool that eats sailors. So another lovely stop on their trip. Lampetia is a nymph. Hermes is the herald and messenger of the god. He's the guy that has the winged sandals. If you've ever seen that before, that's the god with winged sandals. Eumaeus is an old swineherd, which is someone who herds pigs, and a friend of Odysseus. Antinous is a leader among the suitors. So while Odysseus is away, all these men want to marry his wife. Antinous is like the leader of that. We don't love him. Eurynome is the housekeeper for Penelope. Again, Penelope is Odysseus' wife. Penelope, Odysseus' wife. We talked about her in my last video. Eurymachus is a suitor, and Amphinomus is a suitor. Okay, so we have kind of our cast of players. Now we're going to move on to the first tale. Keep in mind that the Odyssey is a very long book, and we're only reading excerpts. We're not going to read a lot of, or any of, Telemachus's journeys, and we're not even going to read all of Odysseus's. So we're just going to read it in the order that our textbook presented it, and go from there. Keep in mind that that term that we talked about yesterday, in media res, means in the middle of things. So we're not going to start at the beginning of the story. We're going to start kind of in the middle and jump around, and I'll try to help you keep track of where we are. So, sailing from Troy. 10 years after the Trojan War, Odysseus departs from the goddess Calypso's island. He arrives in Phaeacia, ruled by Alcinous. Alcinous offers a ship to Odysseus and asks him to tell of his adventures. So at this point, we're literally jumping in the very end of the story. Odysseus has arrived at Phaeacia. So he was 10 years at Troy. And then he was 10 years traveling. So he's almost home. Okay, here he's almost home. And he arrives there, and Alcinous, who's the king of Phaeacia, says, I'll give you a ship to get you home. Sure. Will you tell me about all the adventures you've had first? So, Odysseus says, I am Laertes' son, Odysseus. Men hold me formidable for guile in peace and war. This fame has gone abroad to sky's rim. If you look over here, guile means craftiness or cunning. Odysseus is known for being very clever. My home is on the peaked sea mark of Ithaca, an island off the west coast of Greece, under Mount Nion's wind-blown robe of leaves, in sight of other islands, Dulichium, same, wooded Zacynthus, Ithaca being most lofty in that coastal sea and northwest, while the rest lie east and south. A rocky isle, but good for a boy's training. I shall not see on earth a place more dear, though I have been detained long by Calypso. Calypso is a sea goddess who loved Odysseus, and we're going to read some of her story in a bit. Loveliest among goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to her heart's delight, as Circe of Aea. So this one does not actually give us a definition for this. It just kind of gives us a pronunciation, and we're just going to move on. So Circe is another character that we're going to see in a bit, and she's an enchantress. She's also sometimes referred to as a nymph, a sea nymph. As Circe of Aea, the enchantress desired me and detained me in her hall. But in my heart, I never gave consent. And we're going to talk about that when we get there, as I don't quite believe him. Where shall a man find sweetness to surpass his own home and his parents? In far lands he shall not, though he find a house of gold. So he's saying nothing can compare to home. Regardless of where I go, regardless of where I've been, nothing can compare to home. What of my sailing then from Troy? What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? The wind that carried west from Ilium, and Ilium is Troy, brought me to Ismarus on the far shore, a strong point on the coast of Cicones. I stormed that place and killed the men who fought. So he comes to Cicones, storms the place, and kills the people who fight against him. Plunder we took, and we enslaved the women. Just repeat that. Plunder we took, and we enslaved the women. All because they want what they have, okay? Odysseus is not this stellar, morally good guy, but he's an epic hero because he stands for things that their society holds dear. To make division, equal shares to all. But on the spot I told them, back and quickly, out to sea again. My men were mutinous. So he's saying, like, we did this, but then I was like, nope, let's leave, and my men were really upset, because mutinous means rebellious. Let's see here. I feel like, oh, that's right. My men were mutinous, fools on stores of wine. Sheep after sheep they butchered by the surf and shambling cattle, feasting, while fugitives went inland, running to call to arms the main forces of Cicones. So Odysseus is saying, hey guys, let's leave, let's get out of here. And his men are saying no. They're fools, they're drunk on wine, they are ready to get their due after fighting for 10 years. So they're taking all the sheep. They're butchering all the sheep and cattle and feasting, and they're having a good old time. But fugitives went inland. People went inland. This was an army trained to fight on horseback, or where the ground required, on foot. They came with dawn over that terrain like the leaves and blades of spring. So doom appeared to us. They are not in a good place. Dark word of Zeus for us, our evil days. My men stood up and made a fight of it, backed on the ships with lances kept in play, from bright morning through the blaze of noon, holding our beach, although so far outnumbered. But when the sun passed toward unyoking time, then the Achaeans, which means the Greeks, or Odysseus' men, one by one gave way. 6 benches were left empty in every ship that evening when we pulled away from death. So as they left this thing, each ship had lost 6 men. Now keep in mind, these boats are huge and they all have oars. So they have probably dozens of men on them, I would imagine. But each ship had lost 6, which is a lot. They've lost a lot of people. And this new grief we bore with us to sea. Our precious lives we had, but not our friends. No ship made sail next day until some shipmate had raised a cry 3 times for each poor ghost, unfleshed by the Cicones on that field. So they have just left the Trojan War, and they're already losing people. Okay, they haven't even come to their big thing yet, where he makes mad one of the gods. So now he moves on to telling the story of the Lotus Eaters, which if you've seen Percy Jackson, I think it's the first one. I can't remember. One of the Percy Jackson movies, Percy and I think it's Grover and I can't remember the girl's name. They end up in this casino where they're offered lotus flowers. That is a retelling or an interpretation of this scene. Okay? The Lotus Eaters. Now, Zeus, the Lord of Cloud, roused in the north a storm against the ships, and driving veils of squall moved down like night on land and sea. The bows went plunging at the gust, sails cracked and lashed out strips in the big wind. It's storming at sea. We saw death in that fury, dropped the yards, unshipped the oars, and pulled for the nearest lee. Here you can see a lee is a sheltered area from the wind. Then 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief. Because remember, they just lost people with the Cicones. Until a 3rd dawn came with ringlets shining. Then we put up our masts, hauled sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it safely home that time. Okay? At this point, he's only 2 weeks from home. Okay? It could have been an easy trip home. But as I came round Malaya, the current took me out to sea, and from the north, a fresh gale drove me on past Cythera. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea before dangerous high winds. Upon the 10th, we came to the coastline of the Lotus Eaters, who live upon that flower. So the lotus is a type of flower, and it's used a lot in various mythologies. It's used a lot in yoga. It's an image or a symbol used a lot. But in this society, these people live on the flower. They eat the flower, and that's their sustenance. We landed there to take on water. All ships' companies, which is all the people on the ships, mustered alongside for the midday meal. Then I sent out 2 picked men and a runner to learn what race of men that land sustained. So instead of immediately killing people and enslaving people and taking all their cattle, he picks 2 people to go out and just kind of see who's there. Like, oh, let's see who lives here. They fell in soon enough with Lotus Eaters, who showed no will to do us harm, only offering the sweet lotus to our friends. So these people are just like, hey man, what's up? You want some lotuses? So they're being kind and hospitable, but it's not necessarily going to be a great thing. Okay? But those who ate this honeyed plant, the lotus, never cared to report nor to return. So if you've seen Percy Jackson, which we would have watched the clip if we were in class, if you've seen that, once they eat the flower, they just want to play games and gamble and eat more and spend time together and have fun, right? In this actual telling of it, once they eat the honeyed plant or the sweet plant, they just kind of don't want to come back. They long to stay forever, browsing on that native bloom, forgetful of their homeland. I drove them, this is Odysseus, I drove them, all 3 wailing, to the ships, tied them down under their rowing benches, and called the rest. All hands aboard, come, clear the bench, and no one taste the lotus, or you lose your hope of home. So here, he's taking care of his people, right? He's saying like, okay, we've got to get out of here. You can't just keep eating this flower. So he ties them down and says, come on, guys, we got to go. And he's protecting his men. And that's important to know. He protects those he cares about, okay? Filing into their places by the rowlocks, my oarsmen dipped their long oars in the surf, and we moved out again on our seafaring. So this is the final page for your first day of reading, okay? Now, if you're planning to join me tomorrow, which is Tuesday the 21st, and I haven't gotten a time yet, I'll send out a reminder after I finish this. If you're planning to join me, you don't have to answer these questions. So the first question is, what city did Odysseus and his men plunder? The next question is, for what quality does Odysseus say he is famous? The next question, what beliefs and values are reflected in lines 65 through 69? The fourth question, which characteristics of an epic hero does Odysseus show in this episode? And then finally, what is your first impression of Odysseus? Which of his qualities do you admire and explain? So if you're not going to join me for the live chat, where you'll have to participate in some way, if you're not going to join me for that, you'll need to answer those 5 questions in the Google Doc provided. If you are going to join me for the live chat, let me go ahead and put this on here just so we'll have a visual reminder. So if you're going to join me for the live chat, and it'll be on Google Meet, and it will be a video chat, but also you'll be able to type in the box, okay? You don't have to answer these questions in a Google Doc. Instead, your credit will come from your participation during the chat, okay? So if you have any questions, you can text me. I hope me reading this and stopping to talk just like I would in class helped. Feel free to text me, other things that you need to learn better. I'd be happy to add other things. And I will be sending out information about that live meet in just a bit. Miss you guys. I hope to talk to you tomorrow.